Hey guys, quick heads up before I start the video. The link down below takes you to my Patreon, where you can download the project files for this video. Also gain access to my premium tutorials and in-depth courses where we build games together from start to finish. Check out my Patreon below, gain direct access to years of experience so that you can start working on your dream game tomorrow. Hello everybody and welcome to this video. So this is going to be part 1 of my Bean Battle Royale multiplayer series. So we are making a Bean Battle shooter. And yeah, this is part 1. In this video we are going to be setting up the bean in the most basic form. So we're going to give the bean some movement. We're going to make it so that the bean can spawn in the level. And that's pretty much it for this video, because I think that will already take up a good 10 minutes probably. So let's get right into it. So what do I have here in front of us? Well, this is the Kekdot tutorial project basically. So this is the project file that you will be able to download on the Patreon for this whole series, for the Bean Battle Multiplayer Battle Royale. And in here I just set up a couple of basic things for us. So inside of the content browser we got the asset folder, the blueprint folder, which is still fully empty, and then a levels folder. Right away, let's already make a widgets folder as well. So here we go. And then what do we have in the levels folder? Well, we got a basic default level. So if we click up here on file, go to new, then this is the basic level that is in here right now. And then inside of assets, I set up some assets for you guys. So we got a character folder. Inside of the character folder, we will find ourselves some animations for AO, so for the beam to look up, to forward and down basically, so up, down and forward. We then got the actual bean itself, so this will be the bean that is going to be entering our Battle Royale. And then next to that, we got some basic materials here. So we got something like a nice grid material. I'll be making some more colors as well, so that we can make the world look nice like this basically. So basically like this, or some other colors, but these are just handy for us to use. Then we also got some matte materials, so these are just basic colors, and then we can be coloring some items or objects that we might be placing in the world. And besides that, I got ourselves a little prop folder with some basic props that Rob, my brother, has set up for us. So we got, for example, an assault rifle here, an AK, an AK, we got a health pack, we got some lever stuff, we got loot boxes here, doors, a pistol, sword and shield, a nice catapult, a bomb, some pressure buttons that we can be pressing, and all by all I think that this will be enough for us to get started with this very cool tutorial series. So let's get right into it. The first thing that I have done so far is went up to edit project settings, went to maps and modes, and as the editor startup default map, I set up our startup level, and the game default map is the startup level as well right now. But before we get into that, let's just go ahead and make sure that we can make our bean walk around right now. So in order to do that, then first of all, we are going to need some inputs. So what does that mean? That means that we can control the guy with our keyboard. So if we go up here to edit, then go over to project settings, then we can find ourselves input over here. And yes, I am using Unreal Engine 5.0.3. From 5.1 and upwards, we got enhanced inputs, which pretty much work the same. But if you download this project on Patreon, you can also simply just convert it to a 5.1 project and everything will work perfectly fine. So I'll stick with this version for now. And I might update it later, but for now this is fine. So the first thing we're gonna do is add some axis mappings here. If we open this up, then we're gonna add ourselves 4 axis mappings. And the first one, we're going to call it look up and down with the mouse. Next, we're gonna have move forward and backwards. Then we're gonna have move left and right. And then we're gonna have turn left add right for the mouse. So now that we got the names in here, then this one over here, so up and down, we will be assigning the mouse Y to this with a scale of -1, because otherwise our up and down will be inverted. Then for forward and backward, we are going to go to our keyboard and we're going to have the letter S for backward. So if we do keyboard S, oh, it doesn't really find that, but if we just do S and then scroll down, then we got S over here. We then add another one, which is W for forward. And then the S is going to be of a scale -1, so that walks us back and forwards. Then we got left and right, so we want A for going left. So here we got A, and we want D for going right. So we got D, and then the A is going to be of the -1 scale. And then the last one is turn right and left with the mouse, so looking right and left. And that will be mouse X under the mouse category here at a scale of 1. So that's it for these inputs. Now that we got that, we are then going to go and create ourselves some basic map structure here so that we will get some game modes that we can assign in our levels here. And once we got the game mode set up, we can then basically determine the default pawn class that's going to spawn. And that basically allows us to then move around with the character that we will be coding in just a second now. So what we're going to do is that we're going to make a folder and we're going to call it core. And inside of here will be our core logic. And actually, we're going to wrap that folder inside of a game mode folder. Or rather, let's call it game modes. And then we put core inside of game modes and then inside of core here. So this is the structure. We're then going to create some basic classes, and off of these basic classes, we're later on going to make child classes that derive from this parent content and thus can reuse logic that we are now going to install inside of these base classes. So think about logic such as spawning a character. That is something that you might want to have in the lobby and inside of the gameplay level. So for that reason, we're going to use this parent inheritance structure that Unreal Engine is built on. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in game mode here, and we're going to get ourselves a game mode, not a game mode base. The reason we're going to get a game mode is because game mode contains more default multiplayer functionality. It also says that if you read the description here. So this has a lot of extra handy features that the game mode base class doesn't really have, as this is more intended for single player games. So click yourself the game mode, and we're going to call this BP_GM, which stands for game mode _ core. And then we're going to hit save. Next up, we're going to make ourselves a basic player controller. So click on player controller, BP_PC core. Okay, so that is our BP_PC core. So our core player controller. I'm going to leave it at this for now. And then the next class that we're going to add is the player character. So go up to blueprint class, and then we see the character over here. And we're going to call it BP. And let's call this the base_ character. Or rather, since we're using the term core, we're actually going to be calling this the core character. Then we're going to hit save, and then I'll explain what these classes are. Now, there are other important classes in Unreal, such as the game state and the player state and the HUD class. We will be adding these later on down the line in the project. We don't need them for the purposes of this video, so I'll keep it at this for now, but we will add these later if you're interested in finding out what these are useful for and what we are going to use them for. So first off, we got ourselves a game mode. Now, if you are unfamiliar with what a game mode is, then you can go over here and read something about it. So in short, the game mode basically defines all of the other classes that are installed for a game. So if you think about a game like Call of Duty, you got different modes. You got free-for-all, you got deathmatch, and so on. And basically, all of these games have different rules. So in some games you might have infinite ammo, in others you might never die or don't have falling damage and stuff like that. And some things are free for all, others are team-based. So because all of these game modes are different, we basically need different game modes with different classes so that we can code different types of characters, different types of controllers, different types of game states that keep track of scores, because all these games require different functionality. So basically look at your game mode as your core class, your upper class. That's also why it is separated here from the rest. And then your game mode determines all of these other classes that are used for the functionality of your game. So first, we're going to assign the game mode up here to this level because game modes work on a per level basis. So basically, we have a level and you might also have a level like a main menu, then go into a game level or like a lobby, and per level, you're going to have to assign here using the World Settings tab your game mode. If you don't have the World Settings tab, simply click here on Window and click on World Settings. Next up, we're going to open up the game mode class here. Then we're going to click on class default. And over here, we're going to swap out the default player controller with our core player controller. And next up, we're going to swap out the default pawn class with our core character pawn class. We then hit compile and save. Close this and close the project settings, and we'll see that our classes are now assigned properly. All right, so since we got that, then we can now open up the character and go ahead and code this guy and set everything up. Check out Kekdot Center right now on Steam in Early Access. It's a very fun multiplayer video game, cheaper than a Starbucks coffee. So if you want to have a good time with your friends or strangers, click that link down below, and I appreciate every single one of you, and enjoy the rest of the video. Bye. So the first thing that we see when we open him up is that Anomaly Engine gives us a basic capsule. It also gives us an arrow showing the forward side of the character, and it gives us the ability to implement a mesh. So this is where your character would typically go in, and then to your mesh you can assign animations. And then we got this very interesting character movement component. And what this character movement component does is that we don't have to code movement and jumping and swimming and flying. We don't have to code that all from scratch. Anomaly Engine basically has this component for us that handles everything. It also handles replication of the character's movement and prediction. So it gives us a very nice basic movement ability for the character. So first thing that we're going to do is click on the mesh here, and then we're going to be assigning our bean. And then we see that the bean is up a little bit, so we're going to lower it. And we also see that the capsule is too high, so if we click on the capsule, we can then make the capsule a bunch shorter. And now it's just a matter of messing with these settings a bit to get him in there nicely. He's floating above the air a little bit, so he's floating above the ground a little bit, so let's put him a bit lower. And then make the capsule a tiny bit smaller, something like 65. Yeah, something like this looks good. And then let's put them a little bit down below. So something like this is nice. Then what we see is that he is not facing forward. So if we select the mesh, then we're going to rotate him -90 on the Z axis here to make him face forward. Hit compile and save, and that's it. Then we are going to click on the event graph, and this is where we will now be coding the movement and of this character. So the movement that we want is that we want to be on the back of the character. So if we drag this guy in the scene, then we want a camera that is kind of behind him like this. And then if we are behind him like this, we want to have our crosshair here, or maybe rather like this. I don't know which side we're going to go on, I guess on the right side. So we're going to put the crosshair here, and then this will be our bean. Now, if we want to move left, then it's going to look like this. So quick trick here, I'm holding shift and then I'm dragging on this. So this is how we will be moving to the left and to the right. And then we're going to go forward and backward. That's the type of movement that we want. And then we can also rotate. So I can't really show that, but we can also rotate, and then his nose will look towards the direction that we're looking at. So in order to achieve that, we're going to need to adjust a couple of these default settings. But before doing that, we're simply going to hook up our movement inputs here so that the character can basically walk. So first thing that we're going to type in is the input axis for move forward and backward. So if we type in input, move forward, backward, then we get this one. Then we got the right and left input. So that one was move left and right. Then we had our things for the pitch and the yaw. So basically we got turn right and left, this event. And then we had look up and down. So that was this event. So these events are for the mouse, for making the player look up and down and left and right. And this is for the movement, walking forward and left and right. So first of all, let's take care of the movement here. What we're going to do is off of the move forward backward here, we're going to type in add movement input. And it gives us this node right here. And then we're gonna type in get actor forward vector. And the forward vector is the world direction that we want to walk towards. And the scale is basically how much of this movement input you want to apply. And that will be the scale that comes out of here. So what we previously did, if you click on S, it returns -1. And then if you click W, it returns 1. So that will move us forward and backward. And then we're going to do the same over here. So we're going to type in add movement input yet again. And then what we're going to type in here is get actor right vector. And this time the right vector will be our world direction. And then the axis value goes into the scale again. All right, so now that we got this neatly set up, we can put a comment around this and call this our movement input. And there we go. Then next up will be our mouse input. So for the turn left and right, we're going to drag off of here and type in add controller YAL input. And we're simply going to plug in the axis value into here. And then for looking up and down, we are simply going to type in add controller pitch input. So the pitch is for up and down. Plug that in here. Then we're going to put a comment around this, and we're going to call this YAL and pitch input. So basically I'll call it mouse. Yeah, just call it mouse. All right, so now we got that. So what will happen right now if we click play? Well, let's take a look. We're gonna hit play and we basically fall into the floor. We see that the capsule's over here a little bit and we can move forward, left, right, and we can look in all directions, and we see that our nose here is actually turning in the right directions. But this is not really the camera that we want. So next up, we're gonna be attaching a proper camera to this guy. So you can either attach your camera here to the capsule component, or you could also attach it to the mesh. In the case that your character is going to be ragdolling, then it is always your mesh that ragdolls. And then you do want your camera to be attached to the ragdolling mesh instead of to the capsule that is going to be left behind. So for that purpose, I always recommend attaching your camera to the mesh instead of the capsule. So what we're going to add first is called a spring arm. And it is this little red beam over here. We're going to put it up a little bit towards kind of eye height. And then we're going to twist it 90 degrees. So type in 90 degrees like this. And what is a spring arm? Well, a spring arm is basically like a damper. So it has a length that we can attach the camera at the end. And then it has the ability to do a collision test. So if you get with your camera towards walls and stuff, then this will automatically shorten for the length that the spring arm is. You can also make the spring arm longer and shorter. So this will allow for us later on in the course to be zooming in and out, basically. And then if we select the spring arm, then what we're going to attach here is a camera. So if you type in camera, then there we go. And then we need to make sure that the camera does not have rotation and no location on it. So the camera is just neatly attached like this. Now, if we hit play, we'll see that we automatically have that camera behind the character like this. But I'm not able to look up and down or left and right. And that is because we then finally now need to adjust some class default settings and some character movement component settings and some spring arm settings. So the first thing that we're going to do here right now is that we're going to click on class defaults. And then over here on the right side, we see pawn, and then we see use controller rotation YAL. That's by default, that is on. We're going to turn that off, hit compile, save. Next up, we are going to click the character movement component, and then I got some nice pre-made settings that we're going to apply. So for gravity, we're going to do 2 gravity so that the character is not super floaty. I think by default, the Unreal character floats around a little bit much. Then the half crouch height, let's set that to 65. Then we're going to go down here to the walkable floor angle. We're going to change that to 51, which is a nice setting. Our default movement speed is 600 here. We're going to change it to 800 so that we can move a little bit. Our crouch speed, let's set that to 350. Then we got our minimal analog movement speed. So that's basically the threshold for your the threshold for when you should be accelerating. We set that to 20. Then we see can walk off ledges when crouching. We're going to turn that on because it's pretty handy to be able to walk off of ledges. Next up, we're going to change our jumping velocity so that we can jump a little bit higher to 700. Then we're going to set our air control to 1 and our air boost multiplier to 5 so that we have good control over the character while in the air. Then if we scroll down a little bit, we get to these settings called character movement rotation settings. What we're going to do here is that we're going to set the rotation rate to -1 to be instant. And then we're going to turn on the use controller desired rotation. Next up, we hit compile and save. And now if we hit play, and then let's make us a bit bigger, then we see that we can walk around like this, but we can still not look up and down. And that is because we still need to select the spring arm. And then over here, we need to set use pawn control rotation to true. And now we can finally look around. So if we look around, we start turning. It's a little bit hard to see if we start turning, but we do. So if we look in the shadow, you see the nose turning here. And we can now basically move around like this and start turning the character. We can also look up and down, but the AO, so the character actually bending forward and backward, is not implemented yet, but we will do that in the upcoming video. So now we got some basic movement over here. And that's great. So we basically set up the character with some default movement. Now we can already test and see if this works with 2 players. So we hit save here, go over to number of players 2, listen server, then hit pi. Then we get our server here on the right and then our client here on the left. And then we can see that if the client moves, the server will see the character move. And then we see here that if the server moves, the client sees the character move. And we see the rotation and everything. Now the last thing that would be fun to add is that we can already jump. So let's go ahead and quickly implement that as well. So let's open up our character. And then we go to edit. Project settings, we're going to add ourselves a jump input. So under this time action mappings, we're going to click the plus and call this one jump. And then the key that we want to assign it to is if you click here, then press the spacebar is the spacebar key. Then click close the project settings and then simply type in jump. And then we want to get our action jump here. So it's this one. Then off of the pressed, we want to drag off and type in the jump and we get the jump function. And off of released, we're going to want to type in jump again, but then the stop jumping. Then we select this and press C to put a comment around it and simply call this jumping. So now we're going to hook this up here, compile and save, hit play. Okay, so we got one guy here and the other guy here. So that's fine. And now I do want to warn you guys that if you are inside of the blueprint here and then press play, then you're most likely going to see this happening. So this guy here can move and we can see him move, but this guy here appears to be in the floor. And the reason that he's in the floor is because, well, by default, if you take a look here, when we press play, then it's going to want to spawn at the current camera location. But since we are now in this blueprint full screen and not here, then it doesn't have a current camera location. So it puts the client on 000 location. But it does not do that if we actually have the viewport open and then select, then we simply drop from that camera location. And that's why we were falling from the sky. So in order to fix that, we are going to click here, go to basics, player start, and just drag ourselves in a couple of player starts, just like that. And then when you click play, then it will automatically spawn us at the player starts. That's all default game mode logic. We'll get into that later on in the video as well. But here we go, guys. So we got the server on the right, client on the left here, and then the server can now jump. So we can see our little tic-tac guy jumping. Looks pretty funny. And then the client here can do the same. And there you go, guys. So that's how we set up the basic movement. So that's it for this video, guys. So in this video, we learned how to set up this basic character here. And this is good enough for now. Obviously, this character is going to do a lot more very cool stuff. He's going to be eventually falling from a plane, being able to open loot boxes, grab guns, shoot, have a health component. We're going to add some chat in here. There's going to be a whole battlefield where we can interact with objects. We might do some grenade throwing and other cool stuff. Obviously, we're going to have all the match flow logic, so the ability to actually start a match and then that the zone is coming in, just like you would expect in a battle royale. But this is it for now. In the next video, we're going to be setting up some more blueprint stuff over here. And we are also going to be adding some more logic so that we actually start up the game in a boot screen, then go over to the main menu where we can then host the game and join the game. And then we want to go into the gameplay level where we actually have that countdown before the battle royale starts. So that's the stuff that we're going to be setting up in the next video. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Be sure to check it out on the Patreon if you want to download it. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and see you guys in the next one. Bye.